Welcome back, everybody. If you're contemplating a move in the near future, but you're not entirely sure if it's better to do it still in 2023 or if it might be advantageous to hold off and see what 2024 brings, then this video is for you. This is a really difficult question a lot of people are wrestling with at the moment. First of all, it's always a difficult question because financially the stakes are very high. Real estate is usually the biggest financial transaction in everybody's life. But then on top of that, it's also very personal, very emotional because it literally hits home, and that does not make it easier. In the last few weeks, I had a few of those conversations with clients, and super interesting for me to hear their reasoning and see how they're trying to navigate this and how they try to come up with an answer. And it's not my place to give you an answer. Spoiler alert, first of all, there is no clear-cut answer. But secondly, also because it depends on your personal circumstances. But what I can do is I can share some thoughts with you that I have on the topic that might help you to come up with your personal answer on how and when you want to do this. Because the worst thing you can do is, if you don't have enough information, is just, human nature, freeze up, do nothing. So interesting topic for today. You know what they say, in hindsight, it's 2020. If it eventually will turn out that it would have been smarter to make a move in 2023, or if you should have been waiting until 2024, we all will know in a year from now. There is no way about telling for sure. I can tell you that a lot of people who have not made a move a couple of years ago when interest rates were super low and prices starting taking off, but the market was already very competitive and they decided to wait until the market cools off, they are regretting the decision for sure. In hindsight, everybody who did it back then looks like a genius from today's perspective. But we're trying to take a look to the best of the abilities that we can, the data that we have, what might possibly be happening with prices in the Milwaukee area, and what can we expect from an interest rate environment, and how would that impact your decision making. So by the end of this video, you hopefully have more clarity on how to make the decision personally for you. But in order to get there, we have to start out with looking, why is this decision so difficult to make in the first place, and what are the factors that are influencing and driving it. And when you break it down, you really have three segments. Two of them are fortunately more on the analytical, more on the numbers, on the financial side. So the good thing is we have a lot of data about this. We can look at projections, we can throw things in a spreadsheet and see what the different scenarios would look like for you financially if this or that happens. So that's one side. The other side, unfortunately, is a little bit more emotional, and with that also a little bit more messy, because there's a lot of personal factors that play into this. There's financial considerations from down payment and lifestyle situations, kids, whatever. So the difficulty is, how do you reconcile these two factors? So here's a list of personal factors or personal considerations, and as you can see, it's quite a long list. Many of them are really very personal when it gets into lifestyle or the needs of your family or moving closer to a job. So there's not too much I can contribute. There's other things that are more technical, analytical, where I can usually, help to, obtain more clarity. For example, on first-time homebuyers, when they're trying to decide, well, should we be renting a little bit longer? Then I try to bring it down to math. For example, if you pay $1,500 in rent, that's in 12 months about $18,000. That's 18 grand that is just gone. On the other hand, you're trying to save a little bit on interest rates. How much might that be in dollars and cents? And then you have two numbers to compare, and makes it much easier to make a logical, informed decision. Or, for example, when it comes to navigating financing, which banks are the best? What financing programs can we use? Do we need 20% down? What other options are there? Can we finance with 5% or 10% down, or even zero, like with the VA or USDA loan? So there's lots of options, and I can help with that. Let's talk about home prices. This is always the big question when somebody's contemplating to hold off or wait until next year, is what are home prices going to do? And this chart here has two prices. We have in red the national US average, and then in green the Milwaukee metro area. Let's take a look at the national US average first. You can see we've been in a relatively stable and predictable pattern here all the way until COVID hit, and then, as everybody knows, things went nuts. Home prices went nuts for sure. They shot up almost in a straight line over the course of 2.5 years. And it looks like we are now somewhat consolidating and going sideways. And considering how much national home prices have shot up and how high they already are, it's very conceivable. It makes a lot of sense that they might go sideways for the next few years. When we look at the Milwaukee metro area, the first thing you notice, we are quite a bit lower than the US national average. And when you travel a little bit, you realize Milwaukee is not a below average city. So long term, I don't think there is a good argument to be made that Milwaukee prices should be so much lower than national average prices. The red line, those are not the most expensive areas. That's just the average. There's a lot of cities that are a lot more expensive than the red line here. The second thing that you see is that we have a very strong, very pronounced seasonal pattern that happens more or less in little different shapes every year. And that is very predictable. So we are right now here, we already peaked here in June this year, which is very normal. It's good to see that we're finally back to a predictable seasonal pattern. So very normal behavior here. And now we see median prices dropping. And the low point is usually by the end of December, and then the next year spring market hits. But it's not only prices where we see the difference, it's also the level of competitiveness. So right now on an average offer, we might see, on an average listing, we might see 2 or 3 offers that are competing, maybe a little bit over list price, maybe not over list price. In the spring market this year, we have on a regular basis seen 10, 15 offers, sometimes a lot more. And then, prices up to 10% over, 12% over was not uncommon in hot areas. So it's not only that prices are generally higher, it's also how much you have to offer over list price. And that might be as much as $30,000 or $50,000, and then you have to waive the inspection, maybe even waive the appraisal. So that's a very, very different ballgame. And in fall, in the second half of the year, things are usually simmering down a lot, and just the level of competitiveness is a lot lower. You can go back in my market update videos and watch what I was talking about last year in August and in September, and compare that with what I was putting out there in February and in March, when things got crazy competitive. It was not a good time to buy. And everybody who missed last year, the fall season, was really regretting it in the first quarter, because it was brutally competitive this year. So we don't know what prices are ultimately going to make in Milwaukee, but we do know we have a chronic housing shortage, and the market has finally settled in a more predictable pattern. So based on the data and on the information that we have, the blue line is kind of the best guess that we have what prices might look like next year. And of course, anything can happen. Things like COVID, nobody has seen that coming, and then nobody could predict the impact of that either. So short of that, we should see a pattern that looks roughly like the blue line here. All right, I'm back. Sorry, I had to run out for a final walkthrough quickly. Where did we leave off with mortgage rates? So obviously, mortgage interest rates have a big impact on the behavior of buyers and sellers. Buyers is obvious. With a higher mortgage rate, that means a higher monthly payment, or you have to scale down your budget if you want to hit a certain payment. It also has an impact on seller that is often overlooked, because they're kind of like handcuffed to the old mortgage. So they don't want to put the house on the market and lose a sweet 3% mortgage rate and then having to buy in a 7% rate. So that has been also kept our inventory very, very low, and has slowed down the market altogether quite a bit. So it impacts both buyers and sellers equally. The interesting thing is that a lot of the buyers, especially the ones who are very focused on mortgage rates, have kind of sidelined the market. They stepped out of the market and said, we'll just wait until mortgage rates are coming down. And yet, despite this fact that a lot, if not the majority of buyers have left the market, we are still seeing an overwhelming buyer's demand. So good listings will still attract multiple offers. So the big question is where rates are going. There is a lot of talk and very good reasoning why we can expect mortgage rates to go down. The Mortgage Banker Association puts out a forecast. You can see that here in the orange line. It remains to be seen if this is actually going to happen, because I think we cannot pronounce inflation dead quite yet. The economy is too strong. Jerome Powell will have to keep his foot on the brake until something starts to cool down, job market starts to cool down, unemployment goes up, and we see our GDP shrinking. Until then, I think inflation is still a concern and they will still have to do something about it. So nobody knows when this is going to happen, but there is that good saying that is basically really good advice, and it goes like, marry the house, date the rate. So if you have not heard that before, marry the house, date the rate. What this basically means is that you are most likely going to stay in the house much longer than you are going to have that mortgage. Most people, especially first-time homebuyers, are thinking, okay, I'm going to have this thing for 30 years and pay it off. That is usually not happening. In my personal experience, I've refinanced my houses so many times. I actually had a 6.75% mortgage rate on my first house, and I refinanced it 3 times before I sold it. So that is one thing, but there is no guarantee what rates are going to do. So you can date the rate for a year or two and then hopefully refinance. If you can refinance down 1% lower, that usually makes a lot of financial sense because it's a hassle and you have cost associated with that too. But 1 full percent, if you can save, then usually you have a break even of a year or two. So that makes a lot of sense. So you can date the rate. But here's the problem with dating the rate. If you're conservative thinking, and I think you should be, the prudent thing is that you have to assume that you have to be with this rate for a while. So we're all hoping rates are going down, but there is no guarantee for you being able to refinance that. So we have to keep an eye on the market, have to see what inflation is doing and what the Fed is doing to see where rates are actually going to move. Predicting mortgage rates accurately is next to impossible. A lot of experts have tried in the past and failed miserably. There is a good case to be made that we can expect lower rates. The Mortgage Banker Association here is predicting 5.7 or 5.5 actually for spring next year, Q2. And so that will be interesting to see if that happens. I actually had a conversation with buyers the other day where they were like, hey, wouldn't it be great if rates are coming down next year in spring when we're ready to buy a house? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm really torn on this because part of me, I want to see rates come down because that would unlock a lot of inventory from sellers that are locked to their old rates. And we really desperately need that inventory in the market. At the same time, it would also bring a lot of buyers back into the market that are very interest rate cautious and have sidestepped for now. So they will all be back, which means brutal competition again, not only for our clients, but also for me or for us as agents, because we go through the exact same thing. So we'll have to wait and see. By the way, if you're getting good value out of this video, please do me a huge favor and give this video a like. Give it a thumbs up, doesn't cost you anything, means a lot to me, and it helps this video to spread to more people here in the Greater Milwaukee area. Also, if you know somebody, maybe friends or family, who could benefit from this type of information, let them know about my channel. Maybe even forward this video to them. My team and I are definitely looking forward to hearing from you. It does matter who you work with. And with that, back to the content. So if you're only buying, this thing is relatively easy. About 40% of our clients are first-time homebuyers, so they don't need to worry about the selling piece. And for them, the advice is relatively straightforward. The second half of the year is always the better time in Milwaukee to buy a house. Less competition, lower prices, still good inventory. So hands down, August through November is, until Thanksgiving, that's really the best time to buy. If you're buying and selling, things are getting a little bit more complicated because now you have to pick and choose. And obviously it's better to buy in fall and better to sell in spring. The problem is that doesn't work logistically well because then you would have to be renting for half a year or crash with family. So in a perfect world, you would take advantage of both sides, but unfortunately in reality, you cannot have your cake and eat it at the same time. So you'll have to pick one or another. There's 5 basic strategies that we have when it comes to buying and selling roughly at the same time, because you're not only dealing with logistical issues, you're also dealing with financing issues. Usually it depends on your debt to income ratio. If your lender will allow you to carry 2 mortgages at the same time, which means that you can buy your house before you're selling your house oftentimes, that is ideal. There's also cash flow and down payment issues involved. So which one of those 5 strategies is the best for you? That really depends on your personal circumstances, also on your goals. Are you upgrading? Are you downsizing? Are you moving from a very competitive neighborhood to a less competitive neighborhood? So it really depends on a lot of those things. That's a whole nother YouTube video, and that would go beyond the scope for today. What I want to talk about a little bit here is a mistake that I see a lot of sellers, probably the vast majority of sellers making. And that is, I think they're looking at a real estate transaction no pun intended, but very transactional. So they're not taking advantage of the knowledge of the counseling that a good real estate agent can provide to guide you through the process. So usually what happens is a seller calls me and said, hey, last weekend we decided to sell your house. We know you from your YouTube channel. Can you come over, take a look, see how much our house is worth? And we want to, we're moving in 2 weeks. We want to put it on the market. That is, I'm very, very late in the game here, and there's only so many things that I can do. Yeah, I still have the whole marketing part, and that's really what we specialize in, because selling a house is really a marketing job and not a sales job. But the main thing here is that there is a lot more you can do if you start early. I have here the headline, luck favors the prepared, and that is very, very true when it comes to selling a house and getting it ready to put it on the market. I give you an example. So if you're planning on selling your house next year in spring, it would be really good if we would be out there taking professional exterior pictures, of the outside, the front of the house, the back of the house, some aerial pictures maybe, now that everything is green and nice. So when you list your house in February and you stand out in the sea of all the snowy gray and white and brown listings. So that is the benefit of planning ahead and taking advantage of enough time to preparing things. The other thing is we usually do, and that's standard for us, we include that in our commission, we usually pay for a full home inspection, a professional home inspection. And what that does is we have a really complete picture of all the things that are going wrong or that are going on with the house. We can take care of that, and we do have time to find the right contractor. They're usually busy, they can't get out there right away, so it takes 6 weeks for that to happen. If you have a rush order, that always costs extra. So you don't want to wait with these things until last minute. You want to prepare and get ready for that. Another mistake that I see a lot of sellers are making is they are way too much hung up on things that bother them on their house personally, and they will spend money that does not have a good return on investment when they're selling their house. And sometimes they're blind to issues that I know every buyer will think about it and will be really deterred from making an offer in. So when we come in, we take a look at a house. I have the benefit of seeing it for the very first time. So I look at it through the eyes of a buyer and I say, this really stands out. This needs to be addressed. And more often than not, I have to talk people out of doing some projects that they always wanted to do, but that will not really have a positive impact on the sales price. And that's really wasting money. We have very good data on this. For example, what a kitchen remodel will give you in return on investment, what a bathroom remodel will give you a return on investment. Usually it's best we stick to cleaning, staging, and painting, and there might be a few projects that need to be done because they can really impact the sales price, but more often than not, it is not the case. On the buying side, the same principle is true. Luck favors the prepared. You don't want to stumble into this and, all of a sudden start making offers. We usually start with a buyer's consultation. We'll walk you through the entire process, how this works step by step, so you really have an understanding of how the process works. Then we take a look at the market, that particular market that you're interested in. We set you up with access to the local MLS so you can start getting a feel for the market. We'll do a bunch of showings that are just for educational purposes, so you can see what inventory looks like, what your money buys you, etc. So luck favors the prepared. Also on the buying side, you will feel a lot more ready and a lot more prepared when it comes to the time to actually make an offer. So how does that actually look like when you're buying and selling a house with us? First of all, let me tell you what we don't do. We're not coming over with the contract that's ready to sign. This is how it happens a lot of times. I don't think this is right. We want to build lifelong relationships, and you don't start it out with the contract. So the goal for the first meeting, and that can be on Zoom, it can be in person, is always to get to know each other, to understand your objectives, to understand your boundary conditions, what you're trying to accomplish. Then, of course, I want to take a look at the house, and we'll go through the things like, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. We schedule a home inspection, a pre-listing inspection. We line up contractors if needed and only if it makes sense for your return on investment. Then I usually have to go back in the office, do some homework, and prepare a CMA. Sometimes we're looking at what is fair market value as is and what is fair market value if you do certain things and how much is that going to cost you. And that's actually a bunch of work. So that takes usually a week. Then I can come back to you and we can have that conversation. We can start working out a strategy that will work and a timeline that will work, and get things moving early. For example, taking pictures when the grass is still green and not in January and February when everything is brown. Then we also go over how we usually do marketing. So I've written a whole guide. It's this one. It's called Your Guide to Selling Your House. There's a lot of information in here. Let me see if I can show you this about how we do things on the marketing side. There's a lot of client reviews in here, technology. There's even my YouTube channel in here. So we'll go over that so you have a really good understanding of how the process works. And then at some point, obviously, we also need a contract, but that comes way later. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to explore this further, the easiest way to get a hold of me is to actually go on my website, onpointrg.com. You have the address here on the screen. And you can schedule a strategy call with me. In the top right corner, you'll see a red button that gives you access to my schedule, to my calendar for this week. And you can see where I have openings, and then you can pick one that works for your personal schedule. And we can either do a Zoom call or a phone call. It gives you a number of options, so we can do whatever works best for you. Or you can just send me an email, m.auerbach@kw.com. Definitely looking forward to hearing from you. That's all I had for you today. Thank you very much for watching, and see you at the next one.